welcome on in to another episode of Getting Wild with Terry and Friends, NHL Preview Show Edition. And today we are ready to break down one of the more interesting teams this offseason, a team that had a lot of excitement, I guess you could say, in this offseason. And we will just jump right into it here with additions and subtractions right off the bat for the Flames. We'll start with their subtractions. Johnny Gaudreau, Kelly Yarncroc, Glenn Gaudin, Michael Stone, Brett Ritchie, Eric Gudbranson, Matthew Tkachuk, Cole Schwindt, and Sean Monahan. Obviously, the names that stand out are obviously Tkachuk and Gaudreau, Monahan as well. Losing Brett Ritchie and Eric Gudbranson, obviously some bottom depth that they're missing as well. Cal Yarncroc, a player that I'm surprised they walked away from as well here. And then looking at additions, Jonathan Huberdeau, who they signed to a long-term contract after acquiring him, Mackenzie Weegar, Ben Jones, Kevin Gravel, Kevin Rooney, three depth pieces. And then most recently, the Flames went and signed Nazem Kadri to be their top line center. For me, obviously big additions, some big subtractions as well. And I think we'll have to see how the chemistry of the team is, at least early on. I think that's going to be a big question mark. We will go to Ian first here. What do you think, additions and subtractions?
Yeah, nothing happened in the offseason with the Calgary Flames, clearly. It was just wild. And the perception of the way things were going with this roster from last season to this season, how it changed in a span of really just a few weeks, where it was doom and gloom. We lose Johnny Gaudreau. We lose Matthew Tkachuk. We lose 215 points from our lineup from last year with the departure of those two players. And sure enough, Brad Treliving hears it from the fan base, the media, that's, no one wants to play in Calgary. Calgary's going to take a big fall next season. And he said, that's enough of that shit. I'm not standing for it. I'm going to, basically roll up my sleeves, get to work, and see what I can do to make sure this is still not only a playoff team, but potentially still a contending team next season. And boy, did he work overtime and managed to find a way to do it. Incredible work, bringing in Jonathan Huberdeau, bringing in Mackenzie Weegar in the deal for Matthew Tkachuk from the Florida Panthers, and doing it with getting Jonathan Huberdeau locked up long-term. Because the biggest risk I said all along about that trade was that Jonathan Huberdeau was an unrestricted free agent after this season coming up. Same thing with Mackenzie Weegar. Now, Weegar's not signed long-term yet either, but all indications and reports say he's going to sign long-term after this season. It's just a question of when, not if. And what you get is obviously a terrific playmaker, scorer, offensive talent in Jonathan Huberdeau, and you get a blossoming defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar. That is what he's become the last few years. He's constantly improved his game, both ends of the ice, a steady shutdown defenseman, a physical defenseman, someone that can chip in on the offensive end from time to time, rarely caught out of position. It doesn't even take that many penalties either for a guy that plays the minutes he does. So very impressive that they got Huberdeau and Weegar back for Matthew Tkachuk. The one thing why I was concerned initially, again, was the fact that these guys, there was no term. It could be one and done. They have them for this year and then they're gone. But that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. No longer will be the case with Huberdeau, and it may not be the case with Weegar anymore either. So just terrific work by Treliving there. And of course, then if that wasn't enough, you signed Nazem Kadri, who we thought maybe could go back to Colorado. We thought maybe it could be going to the New York Islanders. Which unfortunately for our friend Nick there ended up being another swing and miss for Lou Lamoriello, who's had pretty much a wretched offseason, if you ask me. But Nazem Kadri lands in Calgary. And you talk about a guy that's a winner, that shows up when the going gets tough, because I thought he elevated his game at playoff time. He had a good regular season too, but he was even better in the playoffs for the Colorado Avalanche. A big game player. And the fact that, you lose someone like Sean Monahan at the center position, who wasn't a Daryl Sutter guy, who was never going to be that person that, values the defensive side of the game, and didn't put in that compete effort, night in, night out, away from the puck, well, you're going to get that tenfold with Nazem Kadri. He is the prototypical Daryl Sutter type of player that maybe Sean Monahan wasn't. Because remember, Sean Monahan his ass was stapled to the bench down the stretch at times under Daryl Sutter. And then, of course, he had the injury, the surgery, and his season was done. Kadri is going to be the kind of player Sutter loves. So it's a great fit having Kadri in here. Two-way center, obviously good offensively, is one of his best offensive seasons ever. Wins big faceoffs for you. It's just does so many different things, Nazem Kadri, to help your team. And that's what Calgary's going to love. So how do you not give this team – it looked like it was going to be a huge thumbs down. If you would have talked to me July 5th or 6th, what do you think? How do you grade Calgary's offseason? I would have said thumbs down. Brutal. Things are falling apart. Now I give them a thumbs up because it's been a remarkable last month or so from Brad Treliving. And Calgary's definitely at least a playoff team again. And they could still make another deep run again. They've got that kind of roster now, thanks to their GM.
All right. We'll go to Vito next. Vito, what do you think about the Flames additions and subtractions?
Well, but if we look at the players' skill overall, I think I guess Gaudreau and Tkachuk are rated as a little bit better, I guess, than Huberdeau or Weegar, or maybe not. Maybe I would not say like that. Maybe people would look like that, but I would say Huberdeau and Weegar is as good as Gaudreau and Tkachuk. I mean, look at Weegar; he's an amazing D-man, and actually, I think Calgary's defense could be better. Because they're kind of a grinder team, I think. So they will always find, I think, forwards. And I mean, maybe these forwards are even better because back in last year it was only one line scoring. For Flames. Well, and second line, what was Mangiapane sometimes playing well, and there was Toffoli then later, and Ben Monahan was not as good as he used to be. So I think this trade actually will help them a lot. I mean, we get Nazem Kadri, a Stanley Cup winner, which definitely is bringing a big boost for the team. So just overall, I think Calgary Flames are in the end going to be actually maybe a better team than they were because. Again, I think there was only one line which was trying to score a lot of goals, and if that line was shut down, there was nobody else to really take the leadership and go ahead and score. And now we got Huberdeau, now we got Kadri. They can be split up. Toffoli, Mangiapane, all those guys. I think Calgary Flames are being competitive next year. I mean, Huberdeau could be a better player than Gaudreau overall. I mean, Gaudreau is a great player, but I think he's still small. He's not as good. He's not very good in playoffs as we have seen last year. Always when the playoffs start, as Ian loved to say, you cannot find that guy with telescope, and that would happen most of.
I love it, Vito. Great stuff.
Yeah, so I think if we are looking really at Flames, which perhaps are making playoffs next year, I think this lineup is much better than they had last year. Kadri, Huberdeau, those two guys are definitely much stronger in playoffs than Gaudreau or Tkachuk. That's it.
All right. Nick, what do you think about the Flames additions and subtractions this offseason?
I think this offseason is been one they've needed for a few years now. Obviously, throughout how many years they had this core with Tkachuk, Monahan, and Gaudreau, obviously it needed to be blown up because it wasn't working. This team kept falling in the playoffs, and this was a team that wasn't going anywhere with this core. So they needed to kind of blow it up and not start from new, but they went out and they did blow it up, and they went out and acquired some players that I think new faces in this franchise is going to be a very good thing for them. Yeah, they lost Monahan. He didn't play much last year. Tkachuk, he's a pest. But you got your pest. You got Kadri. So he's somebody that's going to get under the skin of the other team, just like Tkachuk always did. So you got his replacement there. Huberdeau, I've been advocating. He's one of the more underrated players in hockey. And he's going to be Gaudreau's replacement. I like that. And then losing Gabranson, you upgrade with Mackenzie Weegar. So I think that this team probably is a little bit better than they were strictly because they got new faces, and I think that's exactly what Calgary needed, was to move on from the Gaudreau and the Tkachuk and the Monahan era and start with something different. And I think Huberdeau is going to be good with Mangiapane and Kadri and that core. So I think this was a really good offseason, and I think this is the offseason that the Flames needed because they needed some new faces there. And I think Daryl Sutter will be able to carry this team pretty well as well.
All right. We'll move on to the next part of the show. And that's the top prospects and upcoming free agents here with Calgary. Looking at their cap space, they have a little bit over $2 million in cap space currently. So basically a little bit of wiggle room there should anything happen. Upcoming free agents, Uyghur, obviously, as Ian said, hasn't been signed long term yet. Milan Lucic, his contract is expiring at the end of this season. Trevor Lewis, Dan Vladar, and Uso Valimaki will be a restricted free agent for Calgary. And then we look at their top prospects. And one really interesting thing that I see here is they have a center, a left wing, a right wing, a defense, and a goaltender. All respectable prospects here coming for Calgary. And that's really good, is to have it spread out like that. Matthew Coronado, I drafted him in some of my fantasy leagues. He's going to be a really good scorer for Calgary in the future. Jacob Pelletier could very well make this team this year. We'll be looking at that shortly here in the possible lineup. Dustin Wolf, a bit of a smaller goaltender, but definitely has some good potential here for the future in Calgary. Connor Zary and Jeremy Poirier is a respectable defensive prospect as well. So looking at their top prospects, Calgary may not be going anywhere for a long time, because they definitely have some good prospects coming. Cap situation, I think, is not too bad. I think having Lucic's contract ending will definitely be a good thing for them. We'll go to Nick first this time. What do you think about the upcoming free agents, cap situation, prospects for?
Yeah, I don't follow prospects. I've mentioned that a few times on the show, so I'm not going to pretend like I know them. But looking at the free agents here, the only one that really is the important one here is Mackenzie Weegar. I think they do, as Ian referred to, they're going to most likely sign him and lock him down a little bit. Also, Dan Vladar, I think he's a good backup goaltender that they're going to sign for a couple years to back up Markstrom there. So overall, I mean, they don't have too much to worry about, actually, when it comes to free agents, because mainly they traded all their big guys that were going to be free agents away. Gaudreau was going to be a free agent, I believe. Tkachuk was going to be, I believe, next year as well, if I'm not mistaken. And Milan Lucic, if they do re-sign him, it'd probably be similar to what Vegas did with Kessel, which is like a 1-year deal, $1 million, whatever. So they're not that's not a huge deal. So I think they're gonna be fine if they can keep what they have now together. They don't have to worry about signing too many players in the offseason, which is a good thing for them.
All right. Could we see Lucic go back to Boston to finish out his career in Boston? That's maybe a possibility. We'll go to Vito next. So what do you think here about the prospect situation, upcoming free agents for Calgary?
Well, the list is not that big. I think I know Jeremy Poirier, but I'm not sure if I have heard a lot about the rest of the guys, the top prospects. And nothing much to add here about the free agents. I mean, we're going to see how the season goes for Mackenzie Weegar, if he's good there. If they perhaps play good, perhaps they're going to sign them for more years. And, well, Milan Lucic, I think that his contract is definitely a good thing which is going to end. I think it's going to give them some cap space. And, this I don't see nothing special, actually, in this picture to discuss a lot, just nothing, to be honest.
Yeah, hey, no, some teams are going to have a bunch of upcoming free agents, some not. All teams are different. So, Ian, what do you think here about the Flames prospects, upcoming free agents, and cap space?
Yeah, well, the prospects, this kind of like we talked about with Vegas Golden Knights, this isn't the most deepest prospect pool in the NHL. Again, this has been a team that's been looking to upgrade at the trade deadline. So as a result, what are you doing when you are contending? You're trading away prospects, you're trading away draft capital. And that's what we've seen from the Flames the last few years. So this isn't a deep, depth-laden prospect pool. But Matt Coronado going to be potentially top 6 forward. down the road for the Calgary Flames. They like Peltier as well quite a bit. They do not have a lot of prospect depth along the blue line. They have Poirier and not much else. So it is going to be an area of concern. But the good news for Calgary is their current roster right now, it's not like it's a blue line that's screaming for help right now from a bunch of young prospects. They're pretty well set there on the blue line now. But could it be an issue in 3, 4, 5 years from now? Yes. That defensive depth prospect pool along the pipeline, that pipeline just isn't very strong right now for Calgary. So they are going to have to address that, and look at maybe next year there's going to be some good defensemen available. Make sure that's a target and that's a specific area that you focus on next year in the draft, because they do need more blue line prospects, more blue chip, upper echelon blue line prospects than they currently have right now. And I want to talk about Dustin Wolf a bit, because this could be their goalie of the future here, the Calgary Flames. He was amazing in junior. He had his first full season last year in the American Hockey League. He had a .924 save percentage. He's a big goalie, 6 foot, believe it or not. Big and a tall goaltender, covers a lot of the net. And there's some criticism, with a lot of the goalies that have the huge height, that they're not going to be good with their lateral quickness, their lateral movement, post to post. They're not going to be able to show that athleticism that you often need to as a starting goaltender. But he's fucking shut all those people up, because if you look at some of his highlight tapes, this guy can move in the crease. He's not some statue. He can move post to post. He can, stretch the pads out, keep the puck out of the net that way. He's got extremely good athleticism and mobility for a 6 foot goaltender. So he's really, really quieted the critics in terms of the concerns regarding whether he'd be able to move around in the post. So this is the goalie to watch out for, say, 3 to 5 years from now. Because let's be honest, Markstrom is going to probably have another 2 years, good 3 maybe, because this is a guy now that's in his 30s as a goaltender. So you are going to look at a Dustin Wolf probably in the long term. I mean, 32 years old now is Markstrom. So how many more great years or above average years are you going to get out of him? That ends up being the question. As far as the free agents go, Weegar is not a concern. I think he's going to re-sign long term. Lucic will probably be gone. Just a question of where does he go. A reunion in Boston certainly makes some sense. Trevor Lewis was re-signed to a 1-year contract this offseason. And he's an older player, but he's a very useful player at 35 years old. And Daryl Sutter loves Trevor Lewis. Like he's been joined at the hip with Daryl Sutter going back to those LA Kings days when they were winning Stanley Cups together. So I wouldn't rule out Trevor Lewis being re-signed again for another year after this upcoming season. I mean, I'm convinced at this point, Daryl Sutter and Trevor Lewis, they're going to be living in the same retirement home together, at some point down the road. I mean, that's how long they've been together, from the LA days and now here in Calgary. Valimaki has not progressed as a blue liner. In fact, he didn't even crack the playoff roster for this team last year. So I doubt that they're going to really explore that avenue with him as a restricted free agent next year. Dan Vladar, again, backup goalie, not always your biggest concern when you're talking about signing free agents, but he'll be an unrestricted as well. And if Dustin Wolf's development continues to further, they'll probably say goodbye and punt on Dan Vladar and probably look to maybe bring in Wolf as the backup to Markstrom as early as next year. If Wolf continues to have, if Wolf puts another great year on the board like he did last year, I think that's the route they'll go, and they'll say goodbye to Vladar. So, yep, there you go. That's the prospects in the free agent situation.
All right. And then next up, we'll be going to look up at the possible lineup. Obviously, this is the lineup I set up. And then I'll ask some of your guys' opinions, and I'll kind of move around things to see if we can come up with something that we all like. But this is the possible lineup that I came up with. Kadri, obviously, on the top line, centering Huberdeau and Lindholm. Then you go to the second line, Mikhail Backlund, Toffoli, and Mangiapane. But then after that, there's question marks, in my opinion, with the bottom 2 lines. Kevin Rooney, Matthew Phillips, Matthias Emilio Peterson. These 2 guys, more of younger guys. We don't know if they're ready for the big times. Elias Lindholm could also play center. I don't know if they'd consider moving him down to the second. But really looking at their forwards doesn't really impress me that much. I think it's possible that Seattle will actually score more goals. I actually like Seattle's offense a bit more than Calgary's, just my opinion. But then when you look at their defense and goaltending, Calgary's definitely going to be a playoff team. I'm just not sold on their bottom six, and even their second their second line. I'm just not sold on myself, but that's just my opinion. We will go to Vito next. What do you think about Calgary's lineup, and what changes would you make if you were coach?
Well, I think Lindholm will be a center, so there's going to be three centers: Kadri, Lindholm, Backlund. I think. Then we have wingers. Well, Huberdeau will play in the first line. Not sure if Kadri will be there or maybe Lindholm will be with Huberdeau. You cannot really know that, I think. And then we have to Toffoli. Well, there is one winger missing. Well, not sure what they can do with wing. But anyways, Calgary is a grinder team. Looks like they're gonna grind. All of the players look like grinders. So they changed the scoring line, which was Goudreau and Tkachuk, and now they play some grinders like Kadri there. And well, as you all know, if the first top six is playing well and can score some goals, then the bottom six is just there to kill the time and not the goals let in, and just to keep the puck in the offensive zone. So that's the question, if that bottom six can do that. And I definitely think that Lindholm will play center as well. Otherwise, the bottom six looks very weak, so they will definitely put one good guy in the third line. And perhaps maybe Lucic might play in the third line. Why not? I mean, it's still Lucic. Maybe he can move up to a place. So something like that, I think, will happen. And defense is really good, actually. I also not like, Vigar, Hanifan, good. Okay, Tanev, yeah, Zadorov, Valimaki. Okay, the defense is good. Well, Markstrom, not sold on that guy. I mean, I think he can be hot. He can be cold. We saw that last year. I mean, he's not like a goalie which will come out and steal your game 7. I mean, I don't know. He didn't impress me too much in that playoffs. I mean, he played well. I mean, it was not bad. But if you look like a guy like Jake Ottinger, of course, that guy looks much better than Markstrom. So yeah, the goaltending. Well, it looks like an average lineup. Okay, I think an average lineup, but perhaps making the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, that's where they can actually be better than the last year. So I think that the goal for this team is to make the playoffs. If they make playoffs, they will be as hard as Dallas Stars. I think they will be grinding. There will be a different Calgary team. They will play as actually Daryl Sutter wants, just to grind. So I think this new lineup fits better for Daryl Sutter as a coach. So let's see what happens. If they make playoffs, I think it's going to be a tough team to play against.
All right. We'll go to Ian next. What do you think about this lineup? What changes would you make if you were Daryl Sutter?
It doesn't get much better in terms of the top six. I mean, it's absolutely outstanding on paper. Look, at the center ice position is the strength of this team. I mean, I think they're going to keep Lindholm as the number one center. I think because he's just had a 40-goal season last year, and I think they're going to have no issues keeping him the number one center. Kadri can easily be a number two center and be great. I think it's actually better for him to be a number two center even than a number one. And I think he'll thrive in that role, just like he did in Colorado last year, where it's more of the second line center. And he'll probably play with the likes of Coleman and Mangiapane, who was a big deal to get him re-signed after his breakout offensive season, which was huge. But yeah, there are concerns about the bottom six in terms of offensive punch. Backlund's going to have to give you a little bit more in that regard. What can you get out of Dylan Dubé? Now, Dubé had 18 goals, 14 assists. Can he stretch that to 20, 25 goals next year, maybe 40 points instead of 32? Can he continue to grow his offensive game? If he can, all of a sudden these issues and concerns with the scoring in the bottom six aren't as significant. Can Backlund go from maybe 12 goals, 27 assists last year, maybe closer to 20 goals this year, and closer to 50 points? Can you get just little incremental improvements from both of them offensively? Backlund and Dubé would greatly reduce the concern you have with the bottom six scoring on this team. But again, it remains to be seen if we're going to absolutely see that. I think Kevin Rooney, who they got from the Rangers, is going to be their fourth line center. So you talk about a center ice spot with Lindholm, Kadri, Backlund, and Rooney down the middle. I mean, that's really good. And obviously, we always talk about how you got to be deep down the middle if you're going to be a good hockey team, especially at playoff time. I think their blue line is one of the strengths. I mean, Hanifin had he had some blunders against Edmonton, but McDavid and Draisaitl and Kane and that incredible offensive skill that they have and speed and just playmaking, they're going to make you look silly sometimes, but he's still a good defenseman. Rasmus Anderson continues to just be, I think, better and better the more we see him. Weegar is just a huge addition to this blue line. Oliver Shillington was, I think, one of the most improved defensemen last year in the league, not just to this Calgary team. And then you've got, a bunch of decisions to make, like Valimaki's probably not even going to crack the top 6 when everybody's healthy. Zadorov's coming off an off-season injury. Same with Chris Tanev, who had surgery in the offseason. There's some question whether he'll be ready for training camp, but obviously those would be your 5-6 defensemen, Zadorov and Tanev, if they're going to be healthy for the start of the regular season. And that's a really good blue line, 1 through 6. Is there that one blue liner that's a Norris Trophy candidate on this blue line? No, but 1 through 6, I mean, that's as good a 1 through 6 as a lot of teams could throw out there. So that's what I like. They've got balance, depth at the blue line spot, and I think that's good news for Calgary. And of course, in goal, Markstrom back. Markstrom's obviously had a tough playoff series against Edmonton and struggled against the Oilers all season. Still had a pretty good year, was counted on more often than not to stay healthy. He's still definitely a good goalie, an above-average goalie, so I don't have a ton of concerns there. But no, this is a Calgary team that's going to win with defense, goaltending, and the top 6. I think they'll score enough with the top 6. Their blue line's very solid, 1 through 6, and Markstrom's still an above-average goalie. So this is a good hockey team, roster-wise.
All right. Yeah, I totally forgot about Blake Coleman somehow. My bad.
Blake Coleman. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He'll probably play on the second line, I think. I think if you had to ask me, Terry, it would be Huberdeau, Lindholm, Toffoli on the top line, and probably Mangiapane, Kadri, Coleman on the second line. That's probably what I'd be looking at.
Looks pretty good. Nick, what do you think about the possible lineup and Calgary's overall lineup?
Yeah, obviously the top 6. Everybody's touched on that. That's a solid top 6. They're going to get you a lot of goals, and that defensive core can get you some goals as well. Hannafin can get you some goals. Beeger's going to get you some assists. It's a strong blue line, and I think that's definitely a blue line that's built for the playoffs, like a grinded out style team. Where it feels like Daryl Sutter was behind building this entire team. Like this feels like a Daryl Sutter, Barry Trotz type of grinded out defensive hockey team that can score some goals sometimes. That's built more for the playoffs than they are the regular season. So I think that this team is going to be good. If they can get into the playoffs, they're a team that can win a series or two. And they've got decent depth. I like the blue line depth. I mean, when you have Shillington and Zadorov as your third pairing centers or defenseman, it's pretty good. Markstrom was, I think, a top 5, or I think he was a top 3 candidate last year for the Vezina, if I'm not mistaken. It was him. It was Vasilevsky, Saros, but he was definitely top 5 in my mind for the Vezina last year. So he was pretty good. So I think that overall, this team is going to play good defense. The top 6 is going to get you goals, and this is a team that's built to grind it out during the playoffs. So I think that this lineup was built pretty well, especially with playoffs in mind.
All right. And then we will kind of move along and kind of look at the futures here for the Flames and look at their last 5 years. I'll bring that up here. And we'll start with the last 5 years. So obviously no playoffs in 27-18. 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, both first round exits. No playoffs in 2020, 21, and a second round exit last year. 111 points, the Flames' best year in a while. And now this year, 102.5 is their point total. Minus 600 to make the playoffs, plus 425 to miss the playoffs, plus 240 to win the division, and plus 1,800 to win the Stanley Cup. So based on the other teams that we've seen here and gone over, much lower odds to win the division and to win the Cup here with the Flames than the other teams we've went over, and the highest point total we've seen so far. The Flames got 111 last year. Do they lose 10 points this year? That's basically the question. And I'm not sure. This would not be one of the teams that I would be backing when it comes to point total or really anything at the beginning of the year. I want to see how the team chemistry is huge in a lot of sports, but especially in the NHL. You have to have a good chemistry. I want to see how this team meshes together before I really look at anything here, but um, I don't think the Flames beat their record from last year, but I'm not sure if they lose 10 points. That would, I guess, be 5 less wins, 5 more losses. Doable, but I'm just not sure on this one. So I'm going to kind of pass here on the futures. We'll go to Nick first this time. What do you think about Calgary's last 5 years and the futures?
Yeah, I think we've noticed this for almost every single Pacific team so far, that their point total has dropped since last season. And that's just showing that the improvements, or mostly, obviously we saw the Krakens go up, but like we've seen, like the Kings have gone, their total went down. The Knights, I don't remember if theirs went down or not. Theirs were about the same. Vancouver's, I think, went up actually. But like this is just one of those teams where it's reflecting that the division's getting better. That this total went down 9.5 points that compared to what they recorded last year. I wouldn't really touch that total, because I think that they can win this division and still hit the under potentially. Like I think that division will be close and it'll be competitive and kind of canalize each other potentially here. So I would lean towards maybe taking the plus 240 from them to win the division. I just don't think there's enough value on that line. And I like a couple other teams better for that division. One we went over a couple of videos ago with Vegas. Another one we'll go over in a couple of videos or a couple of streams from now as well, that I think that have a better chance at winning the division as this one here. I think that this team is going to be a wild card team potentially, or a team that gets that number 3 seed. And I think I see value on other teams to win the division. So I'm going to probably do the same as pass on this total, because I think that 102, 103 range is probably where they'll end up. I'm not laying minus 600 for them to make the playoffs. I think there's better teams to win the division, and there's not enough value on me for them to win the cup.
There we go. We'll go to Ian next. Ian, what do you think about the Flames' last 5 years and their futures for this year?
Yeah, actually, Nick made a really good point in that the division is what's going to be concerning about if you want to go over the 102.5 point total with Calgary, because it's going to be a tough division. All your divisional games are going to be a battle every night. With Edmonton, it's going to be a battle. With Vegas, even with the questions I have about them, that's still going to be a tough game. Vancouver, improved, tough game. Anaheim, I think, is going to be better this year. That's no freebie anymore. LA is still, an ascending team as well. So not going to be any easy games in the division. You throw Calgary in the Metro division instead, which I think is very top heavy. Carolina Rangers are great, and everybody else has question marks in the Metro coming into this season. Or in the Central division, which isn't going to be that great. Again, very top heavy. Then you give Calgary, better chance to go over 102.5 if they're in the Central Division, if they're in the Metro Division. But if they're in the Beast of the Pacific Division, the Atlantic, which we'll get to later on, is a very tough top-to-bottom division, I think, this year. So that's why I think, because of the division they're in, it being so difficult, I wouldn't want to rush to bet over 102.5. The lean is over 102.5, because I'm also not convinced they're going to fall 9 or more points off the pace of last year with this roster the way it is. I definitely could make a case to win the division at plus 240. I'd be more interested in that and the cup futures, to be quite honest with you, with Calgary, as opposed to over point total. In fact, that will be a cup future of mine. You don't have to wait till October, first week of the Ice Guys preview show, to figure that one out. I will be on Calgary Flames Stanley Cup futures this year, because this is a team that could have, not a meandering regular season. They'll be a good regular season team, but they may not be like that top 3 or 4 in the league regular season team. But at playoff time, this is where you're going to see what this roster looks like, because this is a playoff built roster. The way they're constructed, they've got defensive-minded forwards everywhere in this lineup. They've got a blue line that 1 through 6 is good in their own end, not just rushing the puck up the ice, commitment to block shots. Nobody exemplifies that more than Chris Tanev, the absolute warrior on that blue line for Calgary. This is definitely a playoff type of team, the way they've constructed it. It's like Daryl Sutter was in the room with Tree Living, putting this roster together, because it's got so much Daryl Sutter fingerprints all over it. So I like them to win the division. I do like them to win the Stanley Cup at an 18-1 type price there, but I would probably shy a little bit away from the point total. This could be like a Golden State Warrior effect here with Calgary, where it's just get into the playoffs, have a solid enough regular season, and then we really show what we're made of at playoff time with this roster that I think is absolutely built for the playoffs. And one last thing I'll say about Calgary and Huberdeau in particular, the one thing I want to see from Huberdeau better in the postseason. I don't think he had his best playoff for the Florida Panthers this past year. So I know you're traded guys like Gaudreau and Tkachuk, kind of like those regular season warriors where they were great for you in the regular season. They wouldn't always show up one game to the next in the playoffs. And Monahan, of course, the same thing. Huberdeau had a little bit of that in him, last year. I thought in the Washington series, which they barely escaped, with the Tampa Bay series, I thought he could have had a bigger impact in the playoffs than he did. So that's the challenge to him now here in Calgary.
All right. And Vito, what do you think about the Flames' last 5 years and their futures for this year?
Just got a quick question for you all. If a team is now plus 1,800 to win the cup, so if they make playoffs like a wild card, is that number going up or no?
Ooh.
Well, yeah, numbers.
That's a great question, because if you think they're going to barely squeak into the playoffs as a wild card, you're better off waiting
25-1 or something like that.
Getting a better price. Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I actually can think this could go under the total. I think they could come in like a wild card, and then you're gonna get a nice opportunity to bet on them, because I really think they are, as you all said, and as we all actually said, they're really built for the playoffs. So yeah. I can see them not winning 7-1 games this season in division. I can see these all games they're gonna play. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. And gonna be a high scoring game anymore. I think that's what Daryl Sutter will impact. And I can see them I can see them coming behind Oilers. I think I can see them coming. I don't know what you talked about Vegas, guys. I think Vegas might be better this year, hopefully. Well, the goaltending line obviously is hard, but you already talked about that. So I can see Calgary coming in as a wild card and like a third place team from division, and from there already we're gonna see. I think that then is the time to bet them, because I think in the playoffs they can really play good. It's going to be a very hard team to play against in the playoffs. This is like a Boston Bruins team. I mean, like with Bergeron, and nobody's there as Bergeron, but still, I like to see 3 strong centers, not all. But when you have 3 strong centers, that's, I think, a playoff team, So I think the point total, actually, you can take a gamble with the under, but they can still make playoffs. They can still make playoffs with under 102, I think, right?
Yes, of course.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think you can go with on their total, and and then you bet them to maybe to win the cup if you wish, and overall point total over, and then to not make the playoffs. Okay,
keep in mind,
makes sense.
Nashville got into the playoffs with 97 points last year, and they were the 8th seed in the Western Conference, so it can be done. By the way, Calgary 15th last year in profitability. Barely profitable, though. They were the of all the teams that made money for their backers last year, Calgary was the one that made the least, and then everybody below them, you lost money with backing them last year. So think about that. They were 50-32 in the regular season last year, but they were only plus 1.78 units. And only Tampa Bay, the only other team that had 50-plus wins last year that was below Calgary in terms of profitability. And they were 51-31 Tampa, but you were actually down units betting them because they're astronomical prices all season long with Tampa, minus 200, minus 250. We'd even see them minus 300, a lot of the time. So, and they were 40-35 to the over Calgary. I'd be careful about them being a profitable regular season team. Again, the regular season, I think, is not going to be where they peak. So it's going to be, I'm going to project that they might be actually, because if they're going to price Calgary anything close to the way they did last year with this group, it might be hard to see them as a profitable winning team in the regular season in terms of units won, units lost. And as far as the over-under goes, 40-35 to the over last year, that's probably going to flip in the other direction, because I think that defense is good. The goaltending's good. We do have some question marks about the scoring depth in the bottom 6. It could lead to more unders with Calgary. And hey, Daryl Sutter's the kind of coach that wants his teams to win those type of lower scoring games as it is.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I was going to say yesterday, if you watched the Seattle Kraken show, I said I'll be targeting a lot of overs and team total overs with Seattle. definitely at times as well. Calgary is completely the opposite. This is going to be an under team that I'm going to be targeting. I am nervous that we might see some fives when Calgary plays because that's not really a number I want.
That will be the point where they make sure that this guy isn't an underbetter when it comes to Calgary. When I see a 5, I stay far away. Yeah,
exactly. If you're giving me 6 at any point or 5.5 with this team, based on how they're constructed at this point, I'll be looking for unders. So there'll be an under team for me that I'll be looking at. But yeah, if anybody doesn't have any closing words about the Flames, no. All right, we will finish off the show there. That is the Calgary Flames. So thanks everybody for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content. Tomorrow will be the Edmonton Oilers. Ian, you said you were going to be away, right? So if you want to give a couple of your thoughts about Edmonton, go right ahead.
Look, I'll say this about Edmonton. They're going to be able to score for days. We know up front what they've got. They're loaded. They brought back Evander Kane. You've obviously got Connor and Leon. You've got Yamamoto's going to take another step forward. You even saw a pulse from Nugent Hopkins, believe it or not, last year. Hyman. I mean, you're absolutely loaded up front. You're going to be able to score goals. The blue line, I was impressed with the blue line at times in the playoffs. Darnell Nurse, Cody Ceci played a lot better last year than I expected. Evan Bouchard really came on strong. Tyson Barrie was better defensively than he's been in the past. Kulak was actually fit in as a nice addition. I think the key for their blue line is, can we get Oscar Klefbom healthy? Is there any chance we could get him back? Because he was expected to be such a big time, big minute, big impact defenseman for them. And he's just had so many injuries. Can he finally get healthy? And can the young prospect, Philip Broberg, crack the lineup regularly? They have high hopes for him, Philip Broberg. And apparently he's training like crazy in the offseason with the goal of making this roster on opening night. So keep an eye on Philip Broberg, see if his development for this blue line, because they need it. They still need some depth on this blue line. If they have Broberg ready to develop and become a full-time NHL defenseman, that would be big. And of course, it goes without saying that Jack Campbell, not perfect by any stretch, but he's an upgrade from the Smith-Koskinen duo that you had last year in net. Campbell will definitely help in between the pipes. And I think, actually, believe it or not, with how well he played down the stretch last year in the AHL, Stuart Skinner, I had to get one of those in there. He should be a solid, serviceable backup for the Edmonton Oilers. I actually think Mike Smith's probably going to announce his retirement. He hasn't said anything yet, but I don't think he's going to be back in Edmonton. I think if you ask Ken Allen, the GM, if you ask Jay Woodcroft, the head coach, they probably want to go with a Campbell-Skinner tandem next year in net. And I think that's a solid tandem, and I think Skinner in a backup role's a capable guy.
All right. Koskinen is done?
Yeah, he went overseas.
Back to Europe. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
And Mike Smith is on injury right now. I
think he's retiring, but it just hasn't been confirmed yet.
Koskinen should be back in Europe a while ago.
They were actually, that's funny. Well, before we finish off the show, they actually announced that he was going back to Europe before Edmonton was even knocked out of the playoffs.
I remember
he was leaving the team. Before even the team had got knocked out of the playoffs, they already knew he was leaving.
It will be one of my Cup futures teams too, and I've always been hesitant to say, yeah, let's back Edmonton to win the Cup. But let's be honest, they lost to Colorado. No shame in that with how good Colorado is, and Campbell gives them a puncher's chance. Campbell's not why Toronto lost against Tampa Bay. Can't hang that on Jack Campbell. You can hang that on Tampa Bay is just elite, find championship pedigree, find a way to win, and Toronto didn't score enough. In the last
and the Leafs are the Leafs.
And the Leafs are the Leafs. They find ways to lose.
It's just a franchise.
Yeah. We'll definitely be getting. I saved the Leafs for last. So did I save the best for last? I don't know. We'll discuss that at another time.
We'll take. They lose in the first round.
Yeah. There we go.
Yes, I like Edmonton. I like Edmonton.
The Leafs not making the playoffs.
We'll look at that when we get to it.
I like Edmonton quite a bit too because of Jay. Yep. Jay just completely resuscitated that team. They actually looked like a structured hockey team for the first time in ages with Jay Woodcroft. I don't know why Dave Tippett, it couldn't go that way with him, but Jay Woodcroft brought some accountability, some structure, some really solid, sound lineup adjustments that he'd make, defensive pairing adjustments, forward adjustments, moving a guy up the lineup, moving a guy back in the lineup. He just had a great pulse and pushed all the right buttons. I think they've got a good one in Jay Woodcroft.
And the players like him too.
Yep.
Well, I mean, the Oilers were letting in first goal every game last season. I think that was a big issue. I think it went mentally on both goaltenders, and on Tippett as well. And if you allow the first goal in the game, like for the first half season, it's really hard for you to play from behind always.
For sure. But that is today's show. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you again. Have a good one, guys.
See you.